Hey everybody. Today we are starting a new thing that we're doing here down at Twin Cites Drum Collective. We're trying to figure out new ways to help people answer people's questions, get some information out there, just talk about stuff that people might want to know about, right? So we're going to call this new video series Twin Cites Drum Collective Shop Talk with Kelly Cook, and today happens to be Dave Stanoch. For those of you guys who aren't familiar, Dave Stanoch is a world-renowned educator and taught here in the Twin Cities at McNally Smith for forever and forever and forever, and at Music Tech before that. Is a staple in the Minneapolis music education scene, as well as worldwide too. So one of the things that you may notice about this particular series is that it's not very refined. It doesn't look like we put a lot of effort into talking about into thinking about our dialogue here, and that's because we at Twin Cites Drum Collective are better drum makers than video makers. So forgive us for these things being a little rough and raw, but the idea is just to kind of open up some communication and have a little bit of fun. So it should be a good time. So today we're going to talk about the very first thing that we deal with when it comes to drums, and that's sticks. It's the mode by which we make our noise.
Right.
It's the mode, or it's the things that we use to create our music. It's how we express ourselves. Sometimes we use sticks. Sometimes we use brushes. Sometimes we use mallets. Sometimes, if you're Dave King, you use toys.
Use your hands.
Hands. I've seen people use all kinds of stuff. So I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, what makes sticks unique? A little bit about the history of them.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we call them what we call them? What does all of that stuff mean? What happens when we change different parts of the stick, right? When we make them longer, when we play with shorter sticks. Sticks are made out of a lot of varieties of different materials, right? Most of them are made out of hickory. Behind that, I think probably the most popular material is maple.
Maple for sure.
And then oak, and then there's also composites. So there are
Right.
people that make them out of different fiber core materials or carbon fiber, all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of going to leave this with Dave a little bit, and Dave, why don't you just kind of break down a little bit for us? Like, one of the first things that I always wondered, one of the very first things that I wanted to figure out when we started this thing, we decided to talk about sticks. Why do they call a 2B a 2B? Why do they call a 5B a 5B? Like, give us a little history on why things are called what they're called.
Right. Honestly, I can't really speak too much in the realm of history, like how it got to be like this. I just know what I learned growing up about the difference between the number you hear on the stick, or you see on the stick, and then the letter, right? And kind of the rule of thumb is like so if it's a 2B, the number comes first, and then
Right.
and then the letter comes later. So as far as the numbers go, in the most classic sense, the lower the number, the thicker the stick, right? So like, for instance, this particular Vic Firth stick, which is a John Mapes Coremaster, is modeled after something that would have been called a 1S, and the S stood for street. So that meant like marching band, parade band, drum line, that kind of thing. And so obviously, this is a heavy hitter for being outdoors and being in the line, but I mean, like, if you're a hard rocker, heavy rocker, something like that, I'm a big believer in letting the stick do the work, so you're going to get a very full sound. You can get a lot of volume out of the drums and the cymbals without having to overexert yourself.
Sure.
That kind of a thing. And then say this was modeled after a 1S, so
Right.
low number, thick stick, S for street. Then you might go to something like something like this. Actually, no, sorry. I have something that's sort of in the league of a 5B. Well, this would be one. In a 5B, the number's higher, so the stick is slightly thinner, and the B stands for band. So in the era they were forged in, that would probably be like dance band.
Sure.
Yeah, and so something like this is, now this, you know, we're living in a very custom era. There's signature sticks and there's all kinds of models. And so, you know, my friends at Vic Firth, the company whose sticks I play and endorse, they've got all kinds of stuff like that. This is called an SD, which maybe stands for snare drum, I'm not sure. 11, you know, and it's called the Slammer, but it's a very refined kind of stick. It has it's not too long, probably about 16 inches or so. It's got this kind of gradual kind of taper, some call it the shoulder, which means that you could do lighter things like that, or turn it around, heavier, lighter on the taper. And all of that stuff comes in handy, you know, because like if I want to play something like Alex Van Halen, I'm going to want like a butt end. Like Wilfredo Reyes Sr. or somebody like that, I might want to have more of this, you know, it's a lighter sounding, little airier. And then if I want to play like Jabbo Starks with James Brown, whenever he played the bell, he liked to play with the tip on top. And so this kind of pointy arrow tip, you know, it gives you a different kind of character. But there's 3 very distinct different sounds. One stick, you know, and when I use sticks, I might play like this. I might play like this, where I get more tone out of my backbeat, because like if I'm just going to lower the pitch a little bit on this cracking Steve Jordan snare. About on the camera, because you can hear the fundamental pitch that comes out as the higher one.
So just kind of getting back into it, or just kind of getting back to the beginning of it.
Yeah.
The origins of it have to deal primarily with the thickness of the stick, and then the purpose which it was used for, right?
Yeah, like an A stood for orchestra.
Right.
And so like a 7A, you know, which everybody knows is a standard thin stick, like a 5A is a standard medium stick.
Right.
You know, you figure in those orchestra halls and stuff like that very light kind of snare drum work that would be going on. You know, a 7A is a stick that does the job.
Sure.
You know, and that's kind of the way it is. And then over time, obviously things have gotten more customized, and the number system may not be as consistent as it used to be, and so on and so forth.
Right. So then, as you're thinking about, when you're thinking about, or if you're giving advice to somebody who's looking at the plethora of sticks that we have to choose from today, where do you start with? Like, say for example, I know people who play very intricately, you know, incredibly fast, with great amounts of, you know, just like delicacy in their playing, that also use very thick sticks. And to me, sometimes it seems a little bit counterintuitive, right? Like it would be a little bit harder to play something more delicate with big old clubs in my hands as opposed to something a little bit thinner.
Yeah.
So as you start to look at the different stuff and you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to do something new, or I'm just starting out, and I walk up to my stick, I go to my local drum shop, and then there's 500 sticks. Where do I start?
Well, I think if you're a beginner and you're a youngster, either or both, you know, you're probably better off with a slightly fuller stick. I mean, here's an example of something that you can use to practice on. It's not the thickest stick in the world, but it's not too thin. It's a 5B. It's called the Chop Out. It has the rubber tips so that, you know, you can practice away from drums and cymbals and pads, you know, and get a good rebound because of the rubber tip. You know, having something that fills your hand up a little bit more, I think helps you get a better sense of some of the motions that you need to make, and the rebound that you want to control, how firm your grip is going to be, all these kind of things. And it just helps you get the feel for having the sticks in your hand. It certainly helps you understand how to like grip so that you can still feel the weight of the stick in your hand, which is something that I advocate, because like sticks aren't very heavy in general, right? But if I can feel the weight of the stick in my hand, then the stick can breathe inside my grip, and I can play more firmly, or I can play a looser grip, and I can get different kinds of sounds and different kind of results in whatever kind of pattern I'm playing, at whatever kind of tempo,
Sure.
and all that kind of stuff like that. So, you know, we can get to the part about like, you know, variety and stuff like that. But if it's me and I'm getting like, say, a youngster a pair of sticks for the first time, I think I'm not going to go with the heaviest thing, but I'm going to go with something that they can't like really ignore in their hand.
So just a good starting point is just finding something perhaps then that just feels good.
Yeah.
With your grip. Beyond that, so then let's talk about, okay, we've got something that we feel comfortable with. Other things. What other stuff about the stick is important to you, or should be important as we talk, or as we look at sticks?
Right. Well, like looking at these two sticks, this Core Master and this Slammer. You know, obviously they're very different in length, and they're different in, you know, their thickness, how fat the stick is. Certainly the tips are very different, and I think that, you know, sticks are going to have different purposes for you. Like this could be a really, obviously it's a great street stick, a core stick, but it could also be like a really jamming thing for you to practice on the pad with, because if you want that full sound, you know, feel that big stick and be able to control that weight, I would look for something like that, because it's going to help me really get a feel for the motions I need to make, the techniques I want to absorb, all that kind of stuff like that. As I start getting out into the kit and playing, I've already kind of demoed a little bit what this stick is able to do. I prefer a stick that's got versatility in it, because like for instance, one thing, I started talking about this a second ago. I might play like this, I might play like that, I might play like this, and I think that's very important, especially this one, because a lot of people don't always realize that if they want to use like a medium, you know, weight, length, and sort of middle of the road kind of stick, a taper like this kind of tip can really help. The more pointed the tip, you know, if I'm up on the tip, where I'm getting less mass on the cymbal, that's one kind of sound. If I go on the side, that's fuller for sure. And then of course we talked about like the shoulder and the backside. Sometimes if I'm playing a beat like this, like say I was playing a beat where there was two different kind of backbeat, or my backbeat was in each hand. Practice to make sure that the sound of each backbeat is going to be consistent, like you'd want it in a studio. But I also keep in mind that it's like, well, this is sometimes a good opportunity to make sure my sticks are in the same line, and especially more this way. Especially when you're playing, you know how in a lot of times in bands, it gets louder as the night goes on?
Sure.
Yeah, you know, I believe in letting the stick do the work, so if you have a louder gig, maybe a bigger stick. If you're playing in a very small place, a lighter stick. But, you know, as the band gets louder, so can you.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel to do it, you know. And so there's a great drummer, some people would be familiar with, named Andy Newmark, that got me thinking about that years ago. And it was like, wow, you know, I can use these many different ways. And hopefully I'm answering your question. You know, I haven't really delved into a really light stick yet, but I will. Light sticks are very important to a lot of the work I do too, because like the more intimate the room I'm playing is, again, the stick does the work for me. You know, I don't need as much mass, and I can let a lighter stick help me do the job. And you know, that's kind of how I look at it.
Sure, awesome. So in summary, find something that's comfortable with you. Go to your local drum shop, take a look at all the sections, find something that's comfortable. check out all the different profiles of the sticks from the tapers to the tips. Try them out of the cymbals, see how they feel. Again, this is our, thanks for joining us for what's our first episode of Twin Cites Drum Collective Shop Talk. We just want to keep this short. Please leave us some comments down below in the comments where you can leave them, and we'll do our best to answer and engage with you that way. Check out the Dave Stanoch School of Drumming, DaveStanochSchoolOfDrumming.com, of course Twin Cites Drum Collective at TCDrumCollective.com. Where hopefully we can answer more of your questions or get you the different sticks that you need. Thanks a lot for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Stay well, wash your hands.